Okay, and I think we should record even this part.
Okay. And starting. Let me bring. Okay, sharing sound, excellent. Letting people in, all is well in the world.
Okay.
Okay, man, what a way to begin. Holy cow. What incredible players all the way around. You have to be, this must have been, the whole time I was thinking, this must have been a video made before COVID because all these people are on top of each other making this music. My goodness. Well, okay, you guys, I am not going to spend any more of your time because we have a wonderful guest here, and that is Mrs. Sakari. And Mrs. Sakari is here to help us with our composing workshop. And I'll hand it to you, Mrs. Sakari. What do you have for us?
Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to see you all and to be back. It's so funny that we started with a Ravel piece. We're going to do some listening first. I also have a video to share. And this is the Ravel's string quartet in F major. I think, was it 2 or 3 years ago when the Telegraph Quartet, when they came and visited and we saw them at the library? They actually played, I think, at least a couple of movements from this, if not all of it. I can't recall. But this is another quartet, but it's still an amazing piece. So let's go ahead. We're going to watch that. And as you do, I have a few questions to keep in mind. I'll go ahead and paste those in the chat. The first one is I just want you to think about the beginning of this movement. This is the second movement from this piece. And what is the character of the music? What do you hear or see? Okay, and then also there's a very clear middle section. You'll do the same, right? I'll paste that in the chat, but for now, let me get the video up so you can begin to enjoy it. All right, I'll go ahead and pause that for now. All right, what did you guys hear? So we had the opening of the movement. What did you see or hear? How did it make you feel? What techniques were they using? You can go ahead and unmute if you'd like. I think we're small enough. Go ahead, Aaron.
So the beginning felt like you were learning how to fly in the clouds. Like a Peter Pan type of feeling up in the clouds.
Nice. Yeah, does anyone else want to chime in? Dun, 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 dun. How are they playing it? What articulations were they using? How are they making those notes? Sophia has it. Pizzicato, right? Right, what about the middle section? How would you describe that? So the beginning was very energetic and dance-like, and then we have the middle. What happened there?
It got a little slower.
Yeah, slower. What else? Tell us more about that.
It felt like the mood went down to like serious.
Okay, it was more serious. Yeah, so the beginning was very energetic, right? Like you're floating. Okay, and then it got more serious. And then it went back to with some little transitions and things, it went back to that original idea, right? In classical music, we often have things like that. We call that contrast, right? When you have one section and then in the next section, you change it up and it's different. Sometimes it's just a small contrast, like maybe they switch from a major key to a minor key or something like that. Or maybe there is something completely different altogether. Oh yeah. Some Pixar animations. That would actually be really cool to see, like a cartoon animated to that movement. I would love to see that. Yeah. So one of the ways I like to think about making contrast when I compose is by thinking about the different elements of music. I'm going to go ahead and share a document with you guys, and this may be review for some of you, but we'll just quickly sort of review these categories. And then what we're going to do later on is we're going to use these different categories like a menu to make your compositions more interesting. So it's not just, the same stuff over and over and over again, right? All right, Erin, since you're the first on my screen, do you want to start? So let's just go ahead and quickly review the beat or pulse. I know this is like really basic stuff, but it's just, a helpful thing to think about. So I'll start with you, Erin.
All right, so beat and pulse is the standard measurement of musical time. It's known as the heartbeat of a song, and it's also always steady.
Right. And so often, we'll, tie that into, tempo. Sometimes we think about like, oh, it has a very faster beat, right? Or something slower. We saw in the string quartet, it switched up quite a bit, right? Divinity, would you like to read rhythm for us?
The organized pattern of longer and shorter note values, combination of sounds and silences. The silences rest in a piece are just as important as the sounds.
Great, thank you. Great. And so when we were listening to the piece earlier, it that rhythmic energy switched up a lot, right? We had that middle section that was a lot slower and smoother, longer note values. Great. Tempo, we kind of touched on that earlier, so we'll skip, right? Dynamics, I know you guys are very familiar with this, right? Loud versus soft. We saw a lot of that in the music as well. Even at the very end, right, it switched very quickly from loud to quiet and sort of captured your attention, right? Daniel, can you read pitch for us?
The perceived highness and lowness of sound.
Right, so that's another thing that you can do when you're creating contrast. Maybe if you have a melody that's really low, say it's in like the cellos or something, you can switch it and bring it to the violins, right? And that's an immediate contrast. Okay, Gabriel, can you read melody?
Combination of tones and pitches, the most memorable or main part of a song.
Thank you, right. And it's often the part that we, that gets stuck on our head that we sing along, right? And then the harmonies, when we have multiple layers, right? And we hear multiple notes at the same time, that becomes harmony, okay? There are a few other elements of music that we're going to focus on a little bit more today, and I won't read this word for word, but there's another one that you may or may not have heard of, and that is called timbre. So the timbre is the character of the sound, right? It's what helps you to know, oh, hey, I'm hearing a trumpet versus, oh, hey, I'm hearing a cello. Or maybe, you pick up the phone. How many of you have picked up the phone and you already know who's talking just based on their voice? Right? That's because everybody's voice has a different timbre. So each instrument has a different timbre from one to the next, but also, on your own instrument, I'll stop sharing for now so I can see all of your beautiful faces, right? On your own instrument, you can change the timbre through articulation. An easy one is going from arco to pizzicato. Still sounds like a violin, right? And we know it's a violin and not a harp. That's also plucked strings. Okay, so let's just do a really quick brainstorm, and then we're actually going to use some of those different elements like a menu to brainstorm our ideas. Now, this might sound a little backwards, right? Often when we're composing, we just start with notes and rhythms. We want to figure out what pitches and what rhythms we want play. Okay, we want to get things down on paper, or if you're on SongMaker, you're clicking little notes. But another way to help you compose is to think about, well, what style do I want? Maybe I want this first section to be like a dance, or maybe I want this next section to be a little bit more, legato and song-like, right? You can start with that and go backwards and then figure out the notes. It also helps you to not get stuck as well, because sometimes we're writing our melody and we've got like 10 seconds down, and then we're like, okay, what next? Right? If you go backwards, sometimes it could be a lot easier to make a full-length piece that way. All right. Now, for the sake of time, we're going to pass up beat, rhythm, and tempo. I think you guys know fast versus slow, long notes versus short notes, right? Let's think about some of the other stuff that we tend to neglect a little bit more. Let's go to timbre, right? So how we make the sound. Eva, would you like to chime in? What's one way we can make our notes?
There's pizzicato.
Pizzicato, oops. And then we'd have arco. But even under arco, what's another? There's different ways of using our bow. Even, who wants to add? Miss Sophia.
Ponticello.
Ooh, I really like that one. Who knows what Ponticello is? I'll stop sharing for a moment. I will go back and put the notes in. How many of you have played Sul Ponticello before? Oh my gosh, you guys are missing out. Okay, grab your instrument. It's super easy. Although for some odd reason, you don't see it in a lot of like school orchestra music, right? It's usually more advanced music, but it's actually not that hard. So Sul Ponticello is actually when you play with your bow really close to the bridge, so it has a nice metallic sound. I'll just play my open G here. Let me turn on my original sound so it's not cutting out. And if I get super close to the bridge, like too close where I'm not normally supposed to play, oops. You often see it combined with tremolo, but that's not always true. All right, that's great. Nice. What about this? How am I playing? Well, what do we call that when we stop the bow? Starts with an S. You usually have a little dot under the note. Thank you, staccato, right. What about, I don't know if you guys have gotten to this yet, what about when you bounce the bow? It also starts with an S. It's easy to mix them up because the symbol looks the same.
Spiccato.
Spiccato, yeah. Okay, those are just a few. There are many, many more. We could keep going on and on. All right, so let's think for a bit. What we're going to do first is we're going to brainstorm. This is where your handy dandy cell phone or tablet or wherever else you have to record on comes in. Okay, and I think what we're going to do right now is we're just going to stick to a timbre or articulation, right? So go ahead and pick one. And I want you to improvise and record yourself. So you can, you know how you're noodling around in orchestra and you're making up stuff and you're not really supposed to be? Now we want you to do that on purpose and record it. Okay, you have all the permission to go ahead and noodle around, okay? And it doesn't have to be, a fancy, sounds like a real piece or something yet. I actually do this all the time. I will improvise or make up stuff on the spot and record it. And then if you like something, it's nice because you can go back and listen to it and then you figure out how to write it down. Okay? All right. And I'll give you 5 more minutes. I might add a few extra things on there too. Any questions before we start on what we're supposed to do? We're good? Okay. The best part about composing and improvising is there aren't any wrong notes. It is true, okay? It's all about what you like or dislike. If you don't like it, change it. If it's weird or something and you want to keep it, it doesn't matter if other people say it's weird, right? It's all yours, okay? So we'll do that. I'll share my screen again. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll keep an eye on it, okay? Okay, about 20 more seconds. Go ahead and wrap up your ideas. Does anyone else want to share? Or you can talk about what the experience is like. I know sometimes it's weird. It's like, oh, I was just messing around and I don't know what people will think. You know, this is a safe space. It's okay. Sometimes I make stuff and I'm like, eh. I have tons and tons of recordings that are just tossed to the side. But that's okay. That's part of the process. We're experimenting, right? To figure out what we like. Does anyone want to talk about what that experience was like, even if you don't feel like playing it for us yet? Aaron.
It was weird because I was trying to piece together different parts here and there, like what worked and what didn't work. It was kind of like a puzzle piece, I guess. It felt like something didn't sound right, but then something else sounded right. But then also the thing that didn't sound right at the beginning might have sounded better on a different type of different type of section. So it's a kind of like moving type of feel.
Yeah, great insight there. I do that all the time. I rarely compose beginning to end. Often I'll make up a bunch of ideas and rearrange them like a puzzle. Yeah, would you like to play some of that for us, even if it's just like a snippet? Doesn't have to be the whole thing.
Okay.
Oh, we have a live performance. Awesome.
I'm trying to figure out the notes because right now it's in cello. Here.
That's okay.
That's kind of the gist of what I got.
Nice. Yeah. So you had like this legato thing where you're going back and forth between the strings, right? And then it gradually changes to like a more of a staccato sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Nice. Yeah. So that's another idea too. You can take the same material and gradually change it to make a piece, even though the main idea stays the same. Right? Yeah. I do that all the time, moving sections of music around like that, you know? It's another way to prevent you from getting stuck too. You just produce it. I remember if you guys were here when Mr. Juan Pablo came last year, he does a similar thing. He just writes stuff and then you rearrange it later, right? It doesn't have to be beginning to end. All right. Can we have one more share? One of the Echo students? All right, Eric.
About the experience, it was a little strange because since I was recording myself and I never like being recorded. So, like my mom tries to record me when I'm practicing sometimes. I just tell her, I was like, nope, I don't like being recorded. And so it was a strange experience, like being myself recording myself.
Yeah, it can be strange, right? Hearing that. And, you know, I'll say too, often when you're improvising, especially because, you know, when classical musicians, we're not used to improvising. We play what's on the page and we stick to that and we try to get the notes right. And so it's so weird to just be, you know, thrown into the deep end and like, now I have to make up everything. One thing I've noticed, even when I improvise sometimes, you know, the notes don't always sound in tune, or they don't, you know, I'm not always, you know, using the right technique or something, and it's often because I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing on the fly anyway. So my advice for that would be just, you know, you're not judging a performance, you're just exploring. It doesn't matter if something sounds a little weird. Sometimes that's how you find a cool sound. You do something wrong, and you're like, actually, I like that, and then you use that in the piece, or wrong, right? So what I want you to do is you can take either the material you're working on right now, or if you want to go back to some of the music you're already composing, and take a moment. If you have like a scratch paper or something, you could jot down just a few observations about what you already see, right? So maybe if it's legato, maybe you pick something that's different from that. Remind me, for those of you who are all, I think those of you who are working on compositions, we're doing Songmaker, right? So if you're in Songmaker, that is one disadvantage, is, you know, you can't, I think the string sound on there is all pizzicato strings. It's very narrow, right? that's a good place to sort of sketch out your melodic ideas. If you want to start composing that way, that's totally fine. But I would encourage you to think, do I actually want those notes pizzicato? Do I want them with the bow? The other thing a songmaker doesn't do, maybe you notice this, is it doesn't do long held notes. If you put the note back to back, it's going to do da 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 over and over again. So, if you're using that as a tool, maybe think about, do I actually want that note to be a long held note, or do I want da 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 da, right? So maybe go ahead and either open up your older piece, or maybe take another listen through what you've been working on today, and then see if you can find something that's contrasting to that, so you can work on a second idea. So this is a big brainstorming session here, right? The goal isn't to come with a finished piece, but it is, to give you some ideas for making something longer and more interesting, because you can have this contrast planned in advance. All right, and it looks like a lot of you are ready to start playing around already, so let's do that, okay? The same thing as last time, except for you're going to come up with some contrasting material, right? So if you were doing a bunch of pizzicato stuff before, maybe you do something with the bow, or maybe you do a different kind of pizzicato, right? Maybe you're strumming like a guitar instead or something, okay? It can be a small change or a big change. Okay, so since we kind of started already, let's do about 3 minutes for improvising something that's a contrasting material. All right, let's go ahead and begin to regroup. Hopefully I haven't interrupted the flow of your creativity. If you're like in the middle of something and you're like, I was getting an idea, I apologize. So Divinity, I saw your first link. Can I share that? Can I screen share that? That's actually a really good example of contrast, even though it's in SongMaker, and I want to share why.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So, Divinity, do you want to tell us a little bit about this piece while I'm getting it up?
It's actually just the theme song of Gravity Falls.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So I'll go ahead and play it. Wow, how long did it take you to put in there?
The whole day, because I had to figure out many things.
Wow, that's a lot of work. Great job doing that. So interestingly enough, can you guys see the SongMaker? Okay. Thumbs up if you can see the SongMaker. All right. So yeah, this is a lot of work. I can tell you really put a great effort into it. That's great. So an interesting note, we use a lot of the same skills in composing in ideas and figuring out what, like if there's a song on the radio or on a show or whatever, and we want to write it down, right? Often we are using our ears and figuring out how to represent that in musical notation. In this case, the notation is SongMaker, right? But that is actually an activity called arranging. So anytime, I know you guys have seen those YouTube videos where maybe a violinist is playing some pop song or something like that, or on cello or whatever, right? Often you call that a cover, okay? Another term for that is an arrangement. So it's someone else's idea, but then you're figuring out how to play it or recreate it on your instrument or on another set of instruments, okay? So there's a small difference there, even though you're figuring out all the notes, writing them down. That would be arranging. Composing is when it's your original idea, you made it up, from scratch, okay? But let's go ahead and play it, because this is a good illustration of contrast anyway. That's pretty catchy. I could keep listening to that. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's a lot of work, I'm sure, right? And yeah, taking all day to figure that out sounds about right. Okay, so this one's interesting because, today we mainly focus on contrast for articulation, timbre, things like that. But this is more of a contrast of what we would call texture, right? So sometimes, maybe an orchestra and just the violins are playing the melody and everyone's waiting, right? Or maybe violin 1 and violin 2 have a melody and like a counter melody and everyone else is doing accompaniment. Or maybe it's just a soloist and all the orchestra is sitting there waiting, right? So that's a change in textures. From the beginning, we have this arpeggiated thing or broken chord, da 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 da, right? And then you go to the middle, and then you see very clearly. That's the cool thing about programs like this is it's very, very visual, right? And then you have one line sort of holding, dun, 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 right? And then you have dun, 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 right? So that's the melody going over this other more static line. So that's another form of contrast that we didn't get to today, mainly because you can't really do it on one instrument very easily, right? But it's something to think about if you're writing for more than one instrument. Yeah, would anyone else like to share? Let's go ahead and share some of the compositions or improvisations that we've been working on right now, right? So you were thinking of a contrasting section. All right, would someone like to talk about what they came up with? Aaron.
I made 2 sections, one for violin and then one for cello. And the one for violin is like a hold for all. There's 4 notes, but there's a hold. Like you slur all 4 notes. And then with the cello, it's more of a 8, but each 8 is slurred. Like the 2 8s are slurred. And then after that section, then it's quarter notes but spiccato. And then so I can play it. I don't know if you'll be able to.
Yeah. Is that something you're putting into a program?
Yeah, Note Flight.
Nice. Okay. Can you play that for us? Nice, yeah, so there's even the rhythmic contrast between instruments. Right, yeah. So that's another way of thinking about it, right? And you saw in the Ravel as well, there was a part in the beginning where they were all pizzicato. And then when they went to the more lyrical legato part, then the cello started sneaking back in with the pizzicato, and then they all went to pizzicato. So the cool thing about that is it helps you to transition, if you're using that as a basis for different sections. And it makes it easier to make things a lot longer. Nice. Do we have one more person who would like to share? I think we have some time as people are making their way in. Awesome. Yeah, Emmy, I saw your message. I tried to open your Songmaker link. It's saying there's a typo in it or something. It won't let me open it. Would you be able to play it for us? Or maybe send me the link again? Oh, Emmy, are you able to send me that Songmaker, not Chromemaker. Okay, thank you. All right, while she's doing that, what questions do you guys have about composing? Aaron.
So when you were talking about when thinking of composing a piece, you were talking about a tone you want to do. Do you sometimes come up with a concept or an image in your head of what you a scene you're trying to make out of the music?
Yeah, that's a great question. Often when I'm writing, I usually will start with the improvising and noodling around first, and then as an image starts to come up, then I will sort of run with that idea and then add something to it. Sometimes I do have sort of a prompt ahead of time. And I don't know if you guys are sticking around for the next portion, but I'll put this in the link so you can save it for later. There's a piece that I wrote a little over a year ago called Fire Season. And let me make sure I send this to everybody. Okay. And the prompt for that, you guys know Vivaldi's Four Seasons, right? Very familiar with it. I know in Echo you guys have played movements from that for sure. The prompt was there was a group out in the LA area called Celestina, and they commissioned me and 3 other composers to write a season each. And I actually got fall, which I didn't originally want. But I was like, okay, I'm going to run with this anyway. And so what I sort of thought of was I wanted to portray a California autumn instead of the, like the movies and TV with all the leaves and the rain and the stuff that we don't get right away. So I found the other part of the prompt is we had to use the instrumentation from Vivaldi's Four Seasons. And so including the harpsichord and a lute, which is pretty cool, figuring out how to write for those. If you guys are unfamiliar with the harpsichord, it's a keyboard instrument like the piano, but there are little quills or feathers on the inside that pluck the strings. So you've probably heard it. It has that really kind of clangy sound. It's it doesn't. There's no sustain. You can't do long notes. It's pretty quiet, that sort of thing. I'm sure you've heard it before. So we also had to do. So there was that, and then we had to match our pieces with poetry. So I actually found poems from 3 California poets that had to do with autumn, and then wrote 3 different movements about. The first one is wind, so the nasty, ugly, kind of haunted sounding winds that we have. The second movement is it's after a fire, so everything is kind of burned and really desolate. And then the third movement is the first rain. So that's another example of contrast. I think I'll play it at the end of the next class if we have time. I could play one movement for it, but yeah, you can also go ahead and listen to it on your own and hear all of the 3 movements with the poems at that link. All right. Oh, Emmy, I see your experiment. Let's go ahead and we'll play that, and then we'll switch over to Foundations in Rinbar. All right. So Emmy, do you want to tell us a little bit about your piece while I pull it up here?
Well, it started off with just another way of playing a scale, and I just added on to it, I guess.
No, that's great. Yeah, I see. It looks like you were doing a lot of the working with the stepwise motion, right? All the notes really close to each other. We do that all the time in music, right? So it might start out kind of like a scale, but this is definitely not just a scale from what I could see. And then you also added some harmonies, stacked the notes on top of each other. So let's go ahead and listen. Wonderful, Emmy. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, and I'll just point out a few things here too. So in the beginning, you sort of have this this little short motif. It's like a little building block for melody, right? Bum 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 bum, and then you move that up a little bit, okay? And then you move it up again, and we have some contrast within this piece too. So let me see if I can. There's my little pointer thing. Okay. All right. So we start out with the little tiny blocks here. You move it up a step. And then you made it longer. So that's a really cool thing, because often when we listen to music in our brains, we have an expectation about what's supposed to happen next, even though it might be brand new to us. And now you're like, I'm going to make that a little bit longer. And then here's a super short one. And then you move that around. And then there's a really long phrase at the end. Okay, so that's also another form of contrast too, within your own, that one idea. So yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. Well, I hope you can all stay, but if not, thank you all for participating and sharing your ideas. I know it can be weird to improvise and mess around and share things that aren't polished yet. We're so used to sharing polished material as classical musicians, so it's definitely very brave of you. Okay. All right. Well, welcome. I am Miss Sakari, who I haven't met yet. Today we're going to be working on composing. We will be working in SongMaker exclusively for this portion. So if you have your instrument out, that's great, but you won't necessarily need it. You can use it if you brainstorm. That's fine. But we're going to start out with listening to a couple of pieces. So for the first one, this is a piece by Lou Harrison called First Concerto for Flute and Percussion. And I know you guys have been working with melodies a lot lately, or the part of the tune that stands out in your head, and usually you sing it, right? And that's sort of the part of music that's in the spotlight. I want you to identify which instrument has the melody, and then for the second instrument, I want you to identify, tell me who has the accompaniment or the sort of backup part, and maybe describe it in your own words, okay? Go ahead and put in the chat the instrument that has the melody. Who had the melody? All right, that's the part if we were, singing this, if this was stuck in our head, which it probably is by now. I saw some of you dancing and bopping your heads to this one, right? You might have that part stuck in your head. There's another part that's stuck in your head, and it's the one that's playing the accompaniment. Can you tell us about that? So we can have someone unmute. Go ahead and raise your hand. It could be a virtual hand or a real hand. I can see you all now. Tell us about the accompaniment, the percussion part. So percussion are instruments that you hit or strike, right? Or do we have any beatboxers in the room who want to... You could probably sing the percussion line at this point now, right? Ooh, that's a great question. Did it change? Did it? Raise your hand if you thought the percussion part changed. You could also raise a virtual hand or put up an emoji. Yes. Raise your hand if yes, it changed. Okay, raise your hand if you think it did not change. Ooh, yes. If you guessed did not change, you are correct. Okay. It's actually funny. In the score, I have a copy of it, but I won't give that right now. In the score, the percussion part probably has I think 2 to 4 measures. And he just says repeat this over and over again till the end of the piece. Okay. How many of you have played with an app like GarageBand, or I know some of you are doing BandLab. I haven't done BandLab a lot. Or just any of those apps where you make loops and you have those little blocks of sound and you just kind of copy and paste them over and over again. Okay, this is very similar. It happens a lot in pop music. You have a drum beat or something or another beat and it just goes on and on and on again to the end of the piece. Okay, let's listen to another piece. This time it's for orchestra, so you have a lot more instruments to listen to and you've really got to put on your listening ears and find this part carefully. So we're going to look for the part that does not change. And the piece is about, I think, 7 minutes long. I'm only going to play like the first 3 minutes, okay? And maybe I'll put it in the chat if you want to watch it again later. So this is a piece by Sylvester Revueltas, a Mexican composer. And it's called Sense Maya, and it's for orchestra. This is the Portland Youth Philharmonic performing it. So I think they're like high school age or so, this group. And what you're going to do is you're going to listen for the part that does not change, okay? See if you can find it with your ears, and see if you can figure out which instruments are playing. Now, if you don't know the name of the instruments, maybe you figure out, okay, is it high instruments or low sounding instruments? Or is it the strings or the woodwinds or percussion or some combination, okay? I'm going to go ahead and put up this piece and we will listen to the first half of it. Again, so you're going to find the part that does not change. All right. I always hate stopping pieces in the middle. All right. Did we find the line that didn't change? Let's start off first. You can go ahead and put in the chat. Is that line in the higher instruments or lower instruments, or maybe even somewhere in the middle? There's a line that stayed the same the whole time. Even when everything got loud and whatnot and moved around and it got quiet again, you still heard it. Low, all right, okay. This part's a little trickier. What instrument section had that? Bum, 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 bum. I can't sing all the way that low. Were they strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion? Who had that the majority of the time? The woodwind instruments, if you're not familiar, they're instruments like clarinet or flute or bassoon. Instruments that you blow through that are not brass. Okay. All right. Any other guesses? You can go ahead and put it in the chat. Name that instrument. Sherlyn.
Woodwind.
It's a woodwind section. Yeah. And then I also saw a guess for percussion too. That's also a really good guess because they played together. Yeah. Who can guess that big woodwind instrument? It was kind of like a mahogany or like a dark brown color, and they had the little like the silver thin mouthpiece, very large. You probably don't know anybody who plays it at school yet because I don't think people start playing it till high school. It's too big. It's a bassoon, okay? I love the bassoon. If I played a woodwind instrument, it would be bassoon, but they also spend so much time making reeds. I don't know if I could handle that. Okay, all right. So that's another example of a line that did not change. If you listen to the end of that piece, you'll hear that dun 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 dun, although much lower, happening through the whole movement or the whole piece, right? We call that an ostinato, and I'll type it in the chat so you can see what that's spelled like. Okay, there we go. An ostinato is a line that does not change, usually for the whole duration of a piece or a movement or a large section of the music, right? Oh, great, nice. So this is a review for you. Cool. All right. So ostinato is Italian for obstinate or stubborn, right? If someone's stubborn, they don't want to change their mind, they don't want to do something different, right? So in music, we have that same sort of concept, except for it's much more pleasant because it's part of the music, right? Okay. And often that's a great compositional tool because you just sort of lay the groundwork and then you build everything on top of it. I mentioned the idea of loops earlier. If any of you play with apps like GarageBand, where you have the little, sometimes they're pre-made sections of music that you can, choose the little blocks and you just repeat them over and over again or build them and stack them. Or you make up your own and record it, and then you just repeat it over and over again, and then you add some stuff on top. That's super common. You hear it in pop music and classical music, just about every genre, right? We have this repeating thing that stays, right? Although in pop music, they probably won't call it ostinato. Okay, but it's the same idea. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into SongMaker and we're going to create our own ostinato and then build a melody on top. I know you guys have been using SongMaker already. I'm going to paste a link in the chat for you. Let me copy it. 1 second, I have a lot of links up. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to create one teeny tiny section of music. Okay, and we'll start with that, and we're going to use that as our building block. I'm going to actually, before I do that, before I send you off, let me close all these other tabs that I have here. I have way more than I need. And I'm going to share with you. So you'll open up this screen. and you guys are pretty familiar with it. I know you guys are pros now. You'll see a blank screen like this. This is the one I'm going to send to you, okay? And you'll notice it doesn't have a lot of boxes there, and that's on purpose, all right? And what you're going to do is you can choose percussion sounds. I don't know if can you guys hear that? Okay. You can choose percussion sounds. You can choose pitches, right? You can change instruments if you want to. And what you're going to do is you're going to create this small section of music. And I encourage you to play it for yourself and see if you like it. And if you want to change it, you can. So here's an example of a short little idea that I came up with just for this demonstration, right? One little tip I'll give you, if you choose pitches that are close, like if you're going to use pitches, you can use only percussion if you want. But if you choose pitches that are kind of close together, it's a little bit easier to build a melody than if they're bouncing all over the place, then your melody might get buried a little bit when you try to make it later. So, you know, maybe you choose notes that are high notes that are kind of close together. It doesn't have to just be two, right? Just kind of keep them in a little small section. Or maybe they're low notes. I'll play this for you. The cool thing about the Chrome Song Maker, which you've probably already realized, is it'll just repeat whatever you've made. So that's a really good way to figure out if you like, you know, some people would call this a loop, right? If you like the little loop that you created. So I'm going to play this for you. Okay. And then you listen to it and you say, okay, yeah, I like that. Maybe I can build something off of it later. And we'll pause there, okay? You will want to save your piece. So I'm going to just quickly review how to do that. Okay. So in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a little button that says save. You'll click that, and then you will click copy link. Okay. And then you're going to open up the Zoom chat and you will paste it there. So you can right click it and click paste if you're on a computer, or Control V, V as in Victor, or Command V if you're on a Mac. And that way we'll have it somewhere. And the cool part is we can save the chat, and that way if you lose it or something, it's somewhere. Okay. Because it's so easy to, I've done this so many times. I'll copy something and I mean to paste it somewhere, and then I forget, and then I'm like, oh no, what was that thing that I meant to put away? So all right, I see lots of little tunes coming in. Okay. Oh, how do you save the chat? Great question. So in your chat window, when you open it up, so in your chat window, there's a little box with 3 buttons. And you click on it and it'll ask you to save the chat if it's allowed in the Zoom. It looks like it is. So there you go. And then it'll save to your computer. Usually there's a folder under like My Documents. There's a Zoom folder and it'll be there. Would someone like to share their little loop for their ostinato? Leo. I can go ahead and open it. Is this the one that you just sent here? Yes, okay. I'll open it for you. And that way I can share my screen. Do you want to go ahead and tell us about it? Or do you just want us to listen?
It doesn't matter.
Okay, let's have a listen. All right. I'll mute myself. All right, I cut off a little early, but yeah, it does have that it's easy to repeat, right? What do you think? You're gonna keep it like that, or are you gonna change it up a bit? It's all up to you. You're the composer.
Well, if I can make a better one, then I'll change it.
Oh, I'll pause. No, it's great. I'm asking you, because the choice is yours. And I think I forgot to mention that in this group. So the fun part about composing or making up your own musical ideas is there are no wrong notes. It's all about, do you like it or do you dislike it? And if you want to change it, you can. You can go back and change it. If you want to keep it like that and run with it, it's all yours. Okay? All right, thanks for sharing. Would anyone else like to share? If so, go ahead and raise your hand and I will put it up on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and share Brianna's. Is it Brianna or Brianna? And make sure I'm saying your name correctly. Okay, all right. So let's hear yours. Okay. All right, so I was listening to this the other day and I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is exactly what we're doing today. Because I played it and it did that very thing. It just looped over and over and over again. I'm going to play it for you guys to hear. Right, so it works well as an ostinato. All the notes are kind of close together, right? And the rhythms repeat. You could put something, you know, if you want to, or if you have a new piece, a new ostinato that you would rather use, you can, right? But you could use something like this and put the melody up higher and that will work just as well. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to expand that, make it longer, okay, and make a full length composition. So here's what you will need to do, and I'll show you first. So let's just watch, and then we'll do it together step by step, okay? So the first thing you're going to do, let me go back to, or I can use Mr. Francisco's. No, we don't want breakout rooms. Almost clicked that. Okay, share screen. You're going to go back down to the bottom right-hand corner. Let me get my little pointer here. I don't know if you can see it. Okay, all right, oops. You're going to go down to the bottom right-hand corner where it says settings. You're going to click on that, the little gear there, and you're going to change the length. So right now it's 1 bar or 1 measure, right? And we're going to change this to, let's go to 4 bars. And then click OK. All right, and as you can see, it's a lot longer now, but we still have the original idea. Now, one thing you might have noticed already when you were using SongMaker before is the screen is divided up. We have this white area and then it's gray and then it alternates colors, right? What that is showing you is 1 bar at a time, right? So if you stay in the same shaded area, this is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then we start again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? Any questions about that before I move on? If you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, so that part's pretty straightforward, hopefully. If not, ask me to repeat later, that's totally fine. What you will do next is, and this might be a little tedious, that's okay. You're going to copy this material into the next 4 bars. So I would maybe recommend starting with, you know, like maybe just percussion. So I'll put this here. We skip every other box for this, right? And this might be a little tricky, so take your time. You can always listen to it to make sure it sounds the same, right? And then maybe I'll start with orange. Okay, I could do that next. So I'll put that here. Notice it's at the beginning of this bar. So we have orange, purple. I put that there. And then I skip one. And then I skip one. And I go to the next one. Like that, okay? I'm going to copy it in a couple more times. Trying not to get my eyes crossed here. Okay, I'll just do that much and let's just listen to it to make sure it stays the same. I made a mistake. Can someone find it? Where did I put the mistake? I mean, it might sound cool. I don't know. Is it the first, the second, or the third bar? Go ahead and put in the chat. The first, second, or third bar? Or some of you holding, yeah, the third, right? I accidentally put the snare, the drum in too early. Oops. Is that right now? Okay, let me try again. Okay, that sounds better. All right, okay. Oh, great question. So Gray, you're wondering how to make it longer because we started out with just a few boxes, right? Go to settings. And yours was originally 1 bar, click the plus sign and change it to 4 bars, and then click OK. The rest of this, you're just gonna have to copy it manually. It's too bad they don't have a copy and paste feature. Okay, let's take a moment and let's just copy our music over. I think maybe 5 minutes, does that sound good? We might not need all of that time. Okay, so your goal right now is to change it from 1 bar to 4 bars and copy what you created, make it longer. And then listen to it, make sure it stays the same the whole time. Okay, there's one thing I forgot to add, and this will help for our next part. I'm going to open up my, share my screen again. So we added more bars to make it longer, right? You also notice there aren't a lot of, there's not a lot of room at the top to add more notes, which we're going to do next. So go back to settings. Let me get my little pointer and I'll get the window out of the way. Okay, go to settings and then where it says octave, see how it says 1 octave, or maybe yours says 2. Click the plus sign again and raise it up a little, no more than 3, okay? And then you'll click the check mark and you'll see there's a lot more space up at the top to put something else. Let's take a moment to do that as well. All right, so now you should have plenty of room. You have the little, building blocks for your ostinato. You've made that. You repeated it over and over again. Okay, now we are going to add our melody on top and create a piece out of that. And I wanted to give you an example. So, thinking back to earlier when we listened to our flute and percussion piece, right? We had the dun, 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 right? And then the flute was doing all sorts of stuff on top, right? So now you get to do something similar, okay? You can create a melody in a different, if your ostinato is low, maybe your melody is up high, or if your ostinato is up high, maybe your melody is down low, okay? Sometimes they can be a little closer together. It's a little bit harder to hear at first, but it can still work. All right. Is Leo still here? I think. Oh, yes. Okay. So, Leo, I listened to your song the other day, and I thought it was a good example of this. May I share it? If not, that's okay. Okay. All right. So let me pull that up. Share my screen. So Leo's he has this repeating pattern here towards the bottom. Right, we have dun, 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 dun. And you see the percussion repeating over and over again. But then the melody does something different on top. Let's have a listen to this one. I'll pause out there. Thanks for letting me share that. Right, so this is a perfect example, okay? Like I said, there's something that repeats. We see that here and in the percussion, right? And then the melody does something else on top, okay? So now that you have your ostinato ready, let's take a moment to go ahead and add our melodies. Now you can, if you want, you can do something more stepwise like he did where the notes are kind of one by one. You can jump around a little bit more, or maybe you take a little rhythmic idea and repeat it. It's all up to you, all right? Let's take, let's do 5 minutes for our melodies, and then we'll have a chance to share. Gray, I just noticed your question. Great question. So Gray is asking, when we say melody, does that mean we put something new on top of it? Yes, right? So remember, the definition of a melody is, it's the main part of a piece. It's the part that is memorable, and usually it gets, stuck in your head. It's the part that you're singing, right? Or humming, whether it has words or not. Okay. I mean, maybe, the drum beat gets stuck in your head, and that's, that's there too, but we would not call that a melody. Does that answer your question? So we are adding a new layer. We put the ostinato there, right? We laid the groundwork, and now we're putting the more interesting stuff on top of it. So chances are your melody is going to change around quite a bit. All right. Does that answer your question, Gray? Yes. Okay. Perfect. Let's see who else we have. Oh, Sherlyn, you volunteered. Let me find your link. You want to tell us a bit about your piece before we play it? You can go ahead and unmute. Or just listen? Okay. Let's do it. So we have another piece where we're sort of playing with our expectations of the rhythm, right? It keeps going off the beat, and all of a sudden, right, it's right on. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Sherlyn, for sharing that. Okay. All right, more volunteers. Let's see. Who has not shared something today? Or maybe we got around the room to everybody. Great. Okay. Let's see yours. Let me get this up again. Gary, would you like to tell us a bit about your piece? I know you're having mic issues earlier. We can try, or we could just play it. All right, thank you, Gray, for sharing that. And yeah, it's always cool to play around with the different instruments too, even though they're robot instruments, if you will. Right? I think the woodwinds and the conga drums is a good combination there. Nice. All right, I think we've got time for at least one more. I have to keep closing the screen so I can see better. All right. Leo, would you like to share? Yeah, okay, let me find yours. So this is your new piece using an ostinato. Okay, would you like to tell us about your piece before we play it? You just listen? Okay.
It's just like a practice.
All right, yeah, so there's your basis for your ostinato there. Good. Okay, so we have this wave going up and down, right? And now if one thing you can do if you want to add more layers to it, just like we did earlier, go down to settings. You can add more bars, so you could go to 4, and I would add another octave at least. right? And now you have the space to add something on top of it. Yeah, that's a pretty cool ostinato. A lot of thick notes there, so that will be interesting to put something over. But you already have the harmonies built in, which is also pretty cool. Nice. Yeah, most of the ostinatos we've been focusing on today have been, you know, like a single line of notes or pitches plus percussion. You can have multiple layers, right, of an ostinato, and then build on top of that even, okay? And again, in like pop music that uses loops and stuff, there are many, right? It's not just one little block of sound that repeats over and over again. There's, you know, it might be the percussion's doing something, and then maybe the guitar is repeating something, the piano, and then maybe they change a little bit later and then they come back to it, right? So that's another idea. Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. What questions do you have for me about composing or music or anything like that? Or just any thoughts that you want to share for our activity today? Raise that a hand for, or was that up from earlier? Okay, take it down. Miss Sophia.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge and way of thinking about composing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Actually,
It's so
guys,
much
why don't we
fun.
take advantage of that? Let's all give some love to Miss Sakari and thank her for coming and sharing all this knowledge with us. Yes. Thank you so much for coming, Miss Sakari. We're so glad that you were here.
Yeah. Alrighty.
And guys, this is a formal announcement, okay? Actually, Miss Anna, would you like to do the honors?
Ooh.
Oh, we can't hear you.
First off, again, I want to thank Miss Sakari. How many of you, if you'll raise your hand, how many of you will continue to work this week or next week on Songmaker? Yeah. And I can't see all of you, but I'm glad, students, you seem to enjoy it. It's always really helpful to us to know that you, you know, are interested in an activity.
Guys, thank you again. And thank everyone. Let's thank Miss Sakari one more time. Yes, thank you, Miss Sakari. We're so glad you were here. What a wonderful chance we got to create today. Please, guys, be safe during your break, all right? And take care of yourselves. Is there anything final, Miss Anna, that we need to? Okay, all right. Well, again, guys, one more time, because we've been preparing for this. Let's give it for Miss Sakari.
Thank you, and thank you all for participating and sharing your works in progress. I know that can be maybe a little scary sometimes to share things that, you know, are not finished or you're not sure how you feel about it yet, but you know, this is part of composing and exploring, right? Like I mentioned earlier, it's all about what you like. Okay, you get to make the choices. There aren't any wrong notes. So thank you.
All right, students, have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful spring break. We will see you on the 12th. Bye, guys.
Bye.